in Columbia County because they're living here.
I didn't- So I'll call the meeting to order and I'll ask, Chris to do a roll call
Yes, Matt B. Morrell,
here.
Ron Knott,
Here.
PJ Keeler, not present, Brenda Adams.
Here.
Suzette Lu.
Here.
Patrice Perry,
Here.
and Chris Watson. Here. There's a quorum.
Okay, I think everybody saw a copy of the May minutes from the previous meeting. So do we need to approve those?
Yeah, that is not asterisk, but that is an oversight on my part. They do need to be approved, so a motion in a second.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Okay.
Second, Patrice, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Appoint Land Bank Association representative. You said you've been going to the,
Is that required by the land bank?
It's required by the Land Bank Association.
Yeah.
The Land Bank Association is basically all the land banks in the state are members of this, and they each appoint representative. With the Land Bank Association is kind of the advocacy arm, advocacy and research, and support, technical assistance, all those things. The duties of the representative are basically you represent the land bank at association meetings, so you have a vote. I've been attending as a non-voting kind of participant. And then the other duty is you go to the annual conference. So those are sort of the two things that you would do as representative. And you report back to this board from the association.
I'm wondering if we have a nominee.
well, I was gonna suggest that if you're our representative, would you be able to vote then?
I would be able to vote at this meeting.
I would recommend Chris, but I would also recommend that we alert you to when they're having programs that would have content that might be of interest or value to you. And then, the land bank will have sufficient funds to be able to either
Educate us.
either go online, we could either give you the link to go online, or we could, make sure that you were registered for conferences.
Is your recommendation in the form of a nomination?
I'm here as a staff person to recommend to the board.
So I will nominate Chris.
Yes,
I'll second that.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed, carried. Congratulations.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Continue to wear that hat.
My position at conferences now is that I don't have, really not interested in learning anything new.
I'm not
I don't
speaking
know
on
it by
that
now,
one.
someone else needs to.
Must be somebody younger.
Yes.
Right now.
Who wants to learn this?
Right.
Okay, policies. Chris, you wanna walk us through those?
Yes, this is the sort of the second tranche of what we call organizational policies. These are all pretty much directly taken from New York State nonprofit corporation law and or public authorities law. You will see almost identical versions of these policies on most land bank websites that you visit. Both you guys have.
You'll see them on local development corporation.
I was gonna say, yeah, every results I've been, I think they're the same,
so I have a question about the ethics. Are we gonna do these individually or as a group?
That's-
Because I have a couple of questions going through, but
All right, well,
not too many, I promise.
Do you want to pull one out, do a BOS time and pull one out and do the rest, please?
I'm sorry, do you want to just start with the code of ethics or do you want?
That's fine.
Sure.
So my question is, that it says, should be provided to all directors and employees upon commencement of employment or appointment, and shall be reviewed annually. Are we gonna send out a reminder that people need to review this annually? What's the maintenance on that?
I believe that would come with your public authority board training, which is also an annual requirement. It's baked into that.
Okay, that's fine. And that's an annual training?
That's an annual training.
But it would also be part of CEBC's role as the administrator to notify each board member when their renewal of those trainings were required. And also the state requires the board itself to reapprove policies once a year at an annual organizational meeting.
I'm aware.
Like
of
we
that.
do it in town, but,
But I was also thinking the fact that we're all county employees, so we all get these trainings anyway every year, so for the most part. So that was the only one I had on code of ethics.
Anybody else?
did you want to approve them one at a time or go through all the questions and then approve them as a slate?
Why don't we do the fastest, whatever's fastest.
Okay.
I think,
After all your questions.
yeah, let's approve as a slate.
Okay, on the document retention policy, I just wanted to have 0.3 aligned with elsewhere in the document, which is about that destruction of documents will be accomplished by shredding or permanently deleting electronic records. In some cases, it says shredding, in some cases, it says both, and I think it should say both in all cases.
Oh, I see on page 10.
My pages aren't numbered, so I'm sorry, I can't tell you what the page number is. So that, just consistency for that. And then the next one is under the sexual harassment policy. And again, I understand as county employees, we all get this training, but I'm concerned about, aren't we required to also have a workplace violence policy?
You have no office.
Now,
You're contracting with an outside firm.
but they are still subject to
Yeah.
those regulations. I think a not-for-profit corporation is required.
We have that. We have it ourselves. CGC.
But we're also
Yeah.
a not-for-profit
Okay.
corporation.
I would imagine we'll have it because workplace, that definition is a little bit fungible, especially in real estate. So at some point, the workplace is going to be property land bank owns where construction is happening.
Exactly.
But that's a separate policy. So this
But
is,
add it and get it on the list next time.
yeah, so this is not a full slate of all the policies that we'll
No.
adopt. So that'll be a second one.
Okay, because I'm just thinking about the fact that this is required by New York State.
Yes.
So, and then under section 2 policy, in some cases, it includes board members, and some it doesn't. And it says applies to employees, applicants, interns, contractors, and persons. And board members are not any of those things. So does it apply to board members? Again, I'm under sexual harassment, section 2
We
policy.
can add that.
Yeah, it should, and I believe sometimes board members are considered employees, but
Not
even though they're not paid, but we'll make that explicit.
Okay,
Just
and
Board member.
employees slash board members.
yeah, and that happens on section 2.8 as well. I'm almost to the end. Yeah. My only other question was just really one of amounts. It says on the travel and discretionary funds policy that anything above $50 needs to be approved. It just seemed like a low amount to me. If somebody wanted to buy a photocopier or a phone lease or
But
something,
that's in the travel.
yeah,
That's for your
it's
travel.
just travel only.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's no other
No.
expense, okay.
Because I think we have to address the broader question in our contract. Because, you know, I think the way it was worded in the first draft was that, we had no authority to spend any money, but I think if it's consistent with a budget and under a certain dollar amount, you gotta be able to,
Okay, just
Not
want to
wait a
whatever
month.
that amount is.
yeah.
Ask you to do a job, you do it.
And if we don't, fire us.
Yeah.
So those are
But you
my,
need money to do it, so.
Okay, so then just so that the motion is correct, so the amendments I have are. We didn't have any input about it because of the timing question. Document destruction, we're going to add a note about electronic deletion where it does not exist. Sexual harassment, we will add board members where board members are not currently mentioned, and I think that was it.
that's it.
Okay.
Good job. I'll make a motion to approve the policies as amended.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, next is committee appointments, so. You said nobody's really signed up for the committees?
Well, we had pretty good response to acquisition, so, I don't reason why
Yeah, I want to be on acquisition too, but I didn't write a letter.
And that is actually okay, right? So you can have any number of board members on any number of committees. They're all going to be open to the public, so when the committees do meet, they'll meet just like this. They'll have public notices, they'll be recorded, live streamed, all those things. So if there are 5 people that would like to be in acquisition, that's fine. But then we just need to round out the other committees that are called for by the bylaws. Which again are, let me not misspeak, I'm refer directly to the bylaws, governance, audit, and finance, I believe, are 2 separate committees we decided.
And I think we made PJ the treasurer.
Finance committee.
Finance, right?
I think I gave you two or three choices in priority order. I don't remember what they were, but
Yeah, the interesting thing with those surveys is that I cannot actually see who responded to which, so lesson learned, that will be a doodle poll going forward if we have to do that again. It just tells you what the responses were, doesn't say.
You can collect emails. There's a, you gotta click,
The IP addresses were on there, and I was like, well, these are county employees, so that must be these.
it's a little thing, you just toggle over, collect emails.
Yeah, we did ask, right?
Yeah, I'd rather than figure it out, but, okay, so acquisition. Was there anyone that did not want to be in acquisition, or do you want that to be a full board?
Yeah, I think that'd be.
Yeah.
good.
Acquisition,
people
just
figure
because
out
of
how it
acquisition and disposition, so now all your real estate transactions would be handled publicly by the full board, which I think makes some sense.
The ABO will require you to have a committee meeting as a committee of the whole, but that you can't blend a committee meeting into a board meeting, right?
The committee meeting makes a recommendation to the full
Yeah,
board,
yeah.
and it
There's,
could be
no-
the same body.
Because we got in trouble with that with the IDA.
there's no question of a quorum if everybody's on it. Is there an issue of a quorum if you have every,
I think the quorum requirements in the bylaws.
so I have to look at those again.
Yeah, you're basically, so the quorum kind of kickstarts the requirement for it to be a public meeting, which it will be. You're just
It's also
not,
gonna be a public meeting, right?
right, but you're just calling a committee meeting to order instead of a board meeting to order, right? I think that's where the difference would be. Some of these things are probably better for Rob. It's not quite a nonprofit attorney, but we run a lot of these meetings.
But we had a situation where, with a 7-member IDA, with an IDA that was at the county level that wasn't doing a lot of work. I wanted to hold all the committee meetings as part of the board, and they said, no, you have to. Well, committee meeting to order, do the business, ended. You couldn't,
Even though it's the same body, we
Yeah.
care of that.
I'd be happy to serve on governance as a second committee, but I'd still like to be on acquisitions.
I would do governance as well.
One more for governance?
There, no, we don't, I don't care. Whatever you want.
So finance, so far we have PJ
I'll do finance as well, but
and then audit. We have anybody for audit?
That should probably be PJ also.
but he can't,
Oh, he can't,
You can't,
he can't be the finance committee chair in the audit, can't be reviewing your own.
can't be a member of that committee. Okay.
I can do audit.
Suzanne,
It only meets once a year.
Perfect.
it's a good one.
We don't get,
good
You
job.
can listen on that ahead of
you don't get,
time.
you don't get your meeting fee then.
See if you can fit it in and around your vacation schedule, right?
All right, then at minimum, we need one more finance and one more audit, then just make sure I've got the correct people so far. For finance, I've got PJ and supervisor not. And then for audit, I've got Sharon Rowe and Suzanne.
There's a, yeah, he needs to.
I'll do audit since it's only once a year.
You want to be on PJ's committee or not on PJ's committee?
I'll do audit.
You can't be on audit and finance.
Right, he's got to be at one of two.
I'm waiting for Patrice to jump
Okay,
on.
yeah, I'd love to be on.
Right.
Oh, you can head.
All right, I'll announce the slate, so you can
I'm gonna tell you.
make a motion. So for acquisition, disposition, we have all 7 board members.
Can we go back to that for a second? Do
Yes.
we need, if, I mean, if you can voluntarily attend, but if you need all 7, because if you prefer not to for a forum reason, then I take my name off and I'll just show up.
Yeah, you could just do
You
3.
should just have 3 on each committee and, so,
Oh, you already had 2 for acquisition.
yeah.
Was that Brenda, Ron?
And they can't, it's not that they can't be at the same time as the board meeting. It's just.
Yeah, I
the
can
only
see where the
3
acquisition should involve 2 or 3, yeah.
Acquisition and disposition should be,
Should, you know,
until you figure out how it works.
right,
Well, if those 2 are acquisition, then you can remain on acquisition and that makes the.
but we may call you in as the attorney
I
anyway,
have no
so.
problem with that. I just think that if we're talking about quorum, maybe we can only keep the 3.
Yeah.
I'll stay on it. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so we did the established acquisition then? You're gonna read them out loud.
Yes. So for acquisition, disposition, Supervisor Adams, Supervisor not, Chris Watts.
Okay.
For finance, I've got PJ, Supervisor not, and Patrice. Audit, I've got Chairman Morel, Suzette, Chris. And then governance, I've got Supervisor Adams, Chairman Rowell, and Supervisor.
Ready to make?
Okay,
So we need a motion to accept those committees.
We'll go for Adams.
So we need a motion to approve those committees.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Carried.
Next, Mike, I think, do you mind if I turn to the services contract?
No, I'd like, we had put together something quick and, you know, frankly, being away, I didn't get to look at it. I think we'd like to just, take it back, and I'd also like, to recommend that we enter into an agreement for 6 months. And then enter into a full year contract in January.
okay,
And we would just prorate, the $15,000 fee that we talked about, to 7,500 for the first 6 months.
I thought about that, but you're also doing an awful lot of prep work to get us to this point.
Right, but the issue is that we're not sure that we can use the budgeted money from the state to pay for services that were put together in advance of becoming a approved land bank. We're looking at that.
But you could research that and get back to us.
Because well, if we can, the only thing I would want to recoup is the Whiteman Osterman
One of these,
bill and but not for our staff time. You're compensating us under the housing appropriation through ARPA. So it'd just be any out of pocket expense.
but if the contract came in as a normal renewable thing in January, it'd be better, I did think of that, you know.
Yeah, because
this-
we'll know what the work is.
Right,
Yeah, I hate to amend it and each month say, well, we need more money rather than. Now, and that will not affect the.
and I
fact
do
that-
think that we're gonna find some things along the way that we might wanna enter into this in the future, that,
Well, I don't think it affects the fact that the state gave us money for a 12-month window. It's just, you know,
which 12 months? 6 of this year and 6 of next?
sure,
Chris is,
so we have two different contracts to get it done.
No, I'm asking for confirmation of that.
Yeah, so that contract is going to, I spoke to Crystal Loeffler, last week was the New York Land Bank Association Conference, last week, Crystal Loeffler from Homes and Community Renewal was there, she basically runs the land bank program by herself at the state level. She will backdate any expenses to July 1st, before that's gonna be a conversation, but we at least have July 1st. There are some paperwork things that we need to do to be able to execute the contract, but she's not really pressuring us yet. So we've got a little bit of a to get.
and
this.
they're very open about amending budgets.
Very easy.
So if we, you know, if we did this for 6 months and then we had a better idea as to what, how, you know, we're not gonna spend 50 of the 100 in the first 6 months. So, I just think that, and then it gets on the calendar year.
Right.
And,
Just in paragraph A, the lettering is off. It goes from A, B to E, F, G. Paragraph 1, first page.
Are you talking about the agenda?
No, the agreement.
Exhibit A, I got A, B, C, D.
I have A, B. E,
No,
F,
and the
G.
amended and restated agreement.
Oh, Supervisor, you might have a previous version of this. I think you've
Okay.
got, yeah, I think you have an earlier.
and then we've got, you know, over,
Look at the one that he gave us.
person that put
Oh, I
this
didn't
together
get
for
one.
us.
Well, I'm looking at the one from today. Are we looking at the?
Yeah,
looking
you-
at the one
they're-
From today. Oh, yeah.
I
don't see
finished
it.
this from Hotel Rooms last week, so there's a pretty late draft I gave.
Oh, oh, in exhibit A, that's what you're looking at?
Yeah, exhibit A.
I'm looking at page 1,
Right, you were looking at
page 1,
page one, number 1,
yes.
I think
and it
the
goes
easiest way to tell,
A, B, and then E.
if you
yeah.
don't have a page number on the bottom right of your packet, then
34.
you have the early draft.
Page
You have a
34.
Page number,
Yeah,
what you're talking about.
34, yeah.
yeah.
So you have a weird one.
No, she has.
No, I have it
when I
too, page 34, from what you just gave. It goes to A.
Amended, restated.
Yeah.
The items of,
It's gotta be
scope of
C.
services,
Oh, I see.
need to be,
Yep, that's it.
Yep, that's,
And then my only question, I know you're taking us back, is just the term of renewal, wouldn't we have to renew it almost annually for budget purposes?
right, that's why I'm
But
saying,
that's time to time, it doesn't have a fixed.
well, it says it was a 1-year contract. So it expires, but I'm suggesting it expires in 6 months.
But it may be rewritten from time to time.
Yeah, be extended. Let's take it back and, I'll get,
I guess the argument there would be if it specifically said annual, you wouldn't be able to renew it at any other time except for.
I don't see annual in the language, but unless,
That's what I mean.
Well, but we want to we need to get a provision in there that's amendable, it can be amended at any time by the,
exactly,
agreement, but we just need to, let's pull this back.
Okay.
So
we're with them.
Well,
Do you need a
We're
motion?
generally agreeable with the concept, how's that?
Do you need a motion to table?
if you could,
Make a motion that we table the agreement for admin services.
Second,
Second,
all in favor,
I,
opposed, carried.
you know me well enough to know I wanted to get it settled before you get the 100,000.
but as I said before, I agree with the concept.
Yeah.
So.
so speaking of, the next item is funding for from homes and community renewal, not for them. So we did, as was included in the email, but since it's a public meeting, we'll announce that we were approved for the full amount of our request to homes and community renewal for non-capital funding. So this can be used for pre-development costs. That's about as hard as the cost as you'd be able to use it on. So things like environmental testing, soil testing, water testing, obviously. Mostly it's for administrative purposes. There is the other pot of money that's currently open that can be used for capital spending. And sort of the takeaway from the conference last week about that pot of money was apply for more acquisition funds if you need them, which is great. And then afterwards, they really want any programming that happens with properties to not come out of land bank funds. So you can use land bank funds to purchase properties. And they honestly don't care where you get them from. It can be from foreclosure lists, it can be from the private market, it can be donations actually are learned, but a little bit trickier with land banks. That's a concept for another day. But then once those properties are acquired, if there's some kind of development or rehabilitation, they would prefer that that money come from other funding sources that the state has available. So they're sort of streamlining the categories that land bank funding is spent in. They're not saying no to anything, but they're kind of trying to divert it. And I think some of that is in response to Tyler versus Hennepin. Because acquisition costs are going to increase, and we'll get into that in a bit. But today was an announcement of the next round of funds available through Homes and Community Renewal. These are the home programs. There's a variety of programs. These are mostly annualized. These come out just about every year. Typically, no more than 2 awardees are designated per county. So here, Galvin is our rural preservation company. We're pretty sure they're still a rural preservation company. There was a deadline to apply to recertify. I'm sure they made it. But they would typically be the ones that are most likely going to apply for these sorts of projects and be able to administer them. We previously had conversations with them about applying for the mobile and manufactured home replacement program. We've been talking about that at the County Housing Task Force for at least 6 or 7 months. We've identified a few communities that would like to participate. So that's one that we would like to work with Galvin on. There is a brand new program that is actually improved in its release form from when we first heard about it. That's in your packets. It's the VRIP, they decided to call it. It's the New York State Rental Improvement Program. When this first was announced, it sort of sounded like a one-off. You've got a vacant building in your town, you would like state funds to help you rehabilitate it. You work with a nonprofit, you get the state funds, you do a rehab. Now it's a local program. So similar to community development block grants, where there's single multifamily home repairs, you would apply for a pot of money and you can either apply knowing who your subrecipients will be. So you enter into agreements with property owners, or you apply for the money and just set up the program and then invite property owners to apply. So it's pretty robust. There are $40 million in this program statewide, which is more than the rest of this year's home funding combined. And none of this money can be used in New York City. So this is all quote unquote upstate, Western New York, Central New York. It's just for those areas. Some of the restrictions to this, the high level ones are nonprofits have to be the applicants. They will take joint applications between a nonprofit and a municipality, but they would really like to see nonprofits as lead. And then individual property owners can apply for, this part's unclear to me, but there's a webinar soon, properties up to 5 units. So anywhere from 1 to 5 units. These are largely for rental rehabs. What I'm not sure of is if you can do scattered sites. So someone can come in and say, I've got 3 properties.
Can they be vacant by choice if a developer has bought something and emptied it to do rehab? Can they qualify?
As far, as far as I understand, there isn't a definition of vacancy in this grant program, but I hope to learn more. But again, this is just one of the programs that just became available to apply for today. But this is the newest one, and it's the biggest pot of money, so it's kind of the most exciting. And it definitely fits in with what land banks were created to do, which is combat vacancy in play. Takeaway from the HCR funding that I forgot to mention, so the $100,000 of non-capital funding we applied for, that is an amount that's annualized, so you reapply for it every year. You don't have to stay in that category. So if it turns out that your budget is going to be a little bit bigger than you thought it was, if you're a little bit busier than you thought you were going to be, you can jump up to the next category and it just increases by 100,000. So we applied for 100, next year we can apply for 2 or even 3 if we wanted to. Nothing to vote on there. Acquisition policy, I don't know if anyone got a chance to see this. We just got this as Land Bank Association members. Yeah, Chris and Rob, this is where I think you're gonna come in handy. So this has been signed, this is law. These are the amendments that were passed as part of the budget. This was,
So this is these 3 documents about exemptions and Bill of Rights.
yeah, so the top, right up until you get to where you start to see your kind of traditional legislation amendments where it's all underscored and in different colored ink. This is just John Sid, he's a Land Bank Association counsel, more or less. This is his memo about these changes. So in some here, you'll see some kind of anecdotal notes that he's just written to himself. The big takeaways are, there's new noticing requirements, especially for senior citizens, so folks that are 65 or older, there's a little bit extra level of care that goes into their foreclosure notices. So that I think the takeaway from some of this is that you guys will have more to do in your office. Most likely.
Guess what?
There's just some new reporting and recording requirements.
Except we don't send foreclosure notices, but
Super
we
notices
did have to reword the back of our tax bills. Yeah.
after the budget passed.
Yeah, which we did do. We may not have the wording exactly, but it covers.
The intent was there.
We basically had it covered already.
Right.
But one thing I will say that we're not doing is, they want a specific telephone number and contact information for each individual assessor, and your school district bills, you'd have to purchase backers by town, and that would cost a lot more, so we just put the website address on there and it covers it.
So this would relate to the towns that pass these, the county and the towns that pass these exemptions, correct?
Yeah, which is every town.
Every town did do it, but only one of the school districts or 2.
So this is related.
No,
to
this is the
foreclosures,
senior,
No, but I'm just thinking.
no, this is the statement, it's on the front, 922, 1C is statement of taxes.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
So
right,
that's
yeah.
that's
That's
the
what I'm
back of the
thinking
bill.
about.
And every town and every school offers that senior exemption. Some just didn't increase the income level. this
Okay,
year.
okay, that's the difference then. Yeah.
I think what this is saying, am I right, Chris, is that if you offer these, then you're gonna get foreclosed on, there's another set of rules.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, I mean,
Mhm. Yeah, right.
it's not changing the exemption or,
But if you haven't filed for the exemption, you're still subject to a pause.
Yeah, they actually refer to that later. Yeah, if you've not yet. Absolutely.
That's the question.
but you're eligible for it, you're saying?
Well, you wouldn't get the back exemption.
No, but
If you
you're
could
eligible
register for
for,
an exemption going forward, and that would only pause your foreclosure, it wouldn't change the amount of tax that you owe.
I
Because
don't
you
think it
could-
pauses a foreclosure, it's just another step that you have to do in order to go to the foreclosure.
To me,
I think
that's a
Chris,
pause.
more,
Yeah.
an extra letter, you
Right.
know.
Well, and these don't pertain to that. This 90512 is specifically for city of Buffalo.
So the part, and there's a few things in here, but for the most part, this has to do with notification and timelines of foreclosures and redemption periods. Kind of the real meat of this. It's on page 4 and 5, the bottom of 4 and 5 of just this packet, when it talks about distribution of surplus. Okay, so within 45 days after the sale of the tax foreclosed property, that's when you've got to figure out what the surplus is and who's going to get it. If it was sold at public sale, whatever the price paid for the property is the surplus and goes back to whoever was foreclosed upon. Whatever it sell minus obviously the things that you determined the county is owed, which are described in the previous section. If it doesn't go to public sale, and this is kind of where land banks start to come into play, if it doesn't go to public sale, the surplus that goes back to whoever was foreclosed upon is the market value, more or less. You've got to go out and get it appraised, you've got to figure out what the market value is. So if it was something that was conveyed directly into the land bank and it was, it had back taxes of say $15,000, but on the open market it got, $500,000. The surplus is going to be the $500,000 minus whatever the county's foreclosure costs were. So you're
That's
actually,
what goes back to the property owner that didn't pay their.
that didn't pay their taxes, right? Now, the wrinkle is, the property, and this is where John's got some questions here. If a property fails to sell at 2 public auctions, the surplus is considered 0 because it has a fair market value of 0 because you try to sell it twice and the market said no, thank you.
I've never had one fail to sell it to public auction. I've never had, the last public auction, there wasn't a single one that didn't sell, so.
That was the online one, right?
Yeah, they're not gonna, that's not gonna be our case.
Right.
And the real difficulty with the non-public sale is there are 3 options.
Yeah.
And if the land bank picks one and the owner thinks that he or she could have gotten more under 2 or 3, you're gonna have a lot.
Yeah.
They're just setting it up for.
Well, and the other problem with that is when they're getting foreclosed on is gonna challenge the assessment.
No.
So the fair market, or the full market value of all these properties that are being foreclosed on is way more than what it actually is according to the tax assessment, tax rolls. So, I mean, we're setting ourselves up to be paying.
Is this what was passed? This language? Doesn't work.
No.
So but it's the fair market value at the time of the tax bill, right? Or is it the current for?
Well, that's the question, there's the 3, and the 1 would be an assessment or an appraisal, which is easy enough to determine. But the other is gonna be the fair market value, that's the full market value that's listed on the most recent tax bills. That one could be way out of whack.
Or way under whack.
So I guess the question is, does the county have a mandate, a directive, or just, I guess, a law that states you have to accept the highest offer on tax sales?
Well, the answer to that, but why wouldn't we? I mean, if it's an auction, we ought.
So just as a question from, a land bank perspective, is it, if it's out the public sale, land bank bids, someone else bids, and land bank comes in at half of that bid, are you required to take the higher bid?
I know that with the Hudson Development Corporation, they didn't function that way. They looked at who the developer is and the chances for a successful development and a timely development and could have the discretion to make that decision.
Well, you have that as a local development corporation, but not in a situation where the property is
When we're holding
involved in
a tax dollar,
tax sale.
No, but I'm just saying there are models for which discretion exists.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to understand if this can be one of those models.
Right.
Yes, I didn't really follow through with that line of thinking. My thought was if we're gonna get these properties. We would then find out if the land bank wants them before we go to auction.
Yeah, I think that's what our interest is. I mean, particularly if the difference between the money collected from the taxes owed is so great, then I think our interest is not in that additional funding, it's in getting health and property for development back on the rolls.
Yeah, although.
Because you're
I
not gonna
agree
get surplus.
mostly,
Exactly.
I would agree mostly, but almost every one of these properties that goes through the foreclosure process and then it's auctioned off is going to be back on the rolls. So it doesn't matter, it's just how it gets back on the
Then
rolls.
you have some ability to direct how it is used once it gets back on. the roll.
Exactly.
Matter of fact, if we sold it to the highest bidder, who's a developer, and he wants to buy this property, they're gonna put it back on the tax rolls tomorrow. If we hand it to a land bank, they're gonna sit on it for an extended period of time possible.
Right, but if you
The
say-
intent is to get it back on the tax rolls, but it could still remain off the tax rolls for a while.
But
So,
I'm just thinking about the type of development. We're hoping to support housing development.
Right.
And that's,
That's why it would come here first and then, but then you're going to do a non-public sale.
We'll see.
Then you're
That's-
subject to that market value.
That was that was my main question. I guess maybe I phrased my original one wrong. When the application first went in, kind of the original conversations about, how would the transfers work? The idea was foreclosure list comes out, you go to the towns, the villages that have properties on that foreclosure list, and you say, is there anything on here you would like to see go into the land bank? If there was, there'd be a conversation at the land bank board level, and then that property would be removed from the sale. If we stick to that
I
model,
thought it would be more like a directed sale, like we
but
used
if
to
you're not
do.
doing a public sale, you're gonna hit this number 2.
Right, right. I mean, my intent before was that we would bring it like what we've always known to be a directed sale. So it would come through committee and the board of supervisors would say, yes, we want to transfer this to the land bank for the taxes owed or something like that, you know, like we've done in the past with certain parcels. But now you have to factor in the real market value.
If you go that route, yeah, I was just quickly hoping they had a sketchy definition of public sale, but they do not. Maybe there's a way around.
So I'm sorry, I haven't read this because it was on the table when I came out. I did, it was sent it by.
Just got it.
Yeah. Well, there is-
John just explained it.
There is a definition of public sale.
They do, yeah.
It's resulting from a public auction conducted in accordance with section 231 of the real property law. But I think, you know, take a $200,000 property. And say there's a current assessment, there's a current appraisal, and there's the full value of the property as of the date of the transfer determined by such other valuation.
But I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
What
I tried to figure that out when I read it.
You and I,
What does that mean?
The other valuation part.
But say all three of those are 200,000, and the property is got $25,000 taxes and penalties. And you go through a private sale, the person gets back $175,000. That's how it works. Then if you go,
I mean, that's simplistic and I don't wanna overcomplicate things, but
So it's gonna encourage people not to pay their taxes, let the county foreclose on them, sell them, and then give you the money back.
I think the one.
yeah, you didn't have to pay the 6% real.
That's right, you know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's where you've got property.
But now you go, Chris.
Assessment.
It may be that the way the land bank puts the restrictions on it and then goes to a public sale, a public auction. And because there are restrictions on it, it's not worth what it would be worth on the open market.
It's
And-
sort of, I mean, the main words.
And then the person gets less money.
except
It could be
that's not defined in here and that's gonna be a
lawsuit.
lawsuit afterwards.
So I think that the main thing here is, we've done what we thought would be the appropriate thing to do, get one of the last 3 or 4 slots of land bank. We're not the only one in the boat here. This land bank association is paying, where's this guy at?
It's expensive.
I mean, he's at a large Syracuse law firm. And the legislature is gonna have to learn through the industry association that there may need to be some modifications because you know, this really doesn't work. And
But this is the first of what I understood to be 2 pieces. The second piece that's hanging out there over our heads is the fact that these classes of people we would not be able to evict them. So if the properties were occupied, we would not be able to foreclose on them. That's what the governor has proposed.
Yeah, and I haven't seen it. in here.
It's not written, but
it's
that's
not
what
been
the,
passed, yeah.
right, it hasn't passed. It is in writing, but it hasn't passed. It's
Now-
moving through the committees.
Part of what I'm thinking is gonna happen here is because they are, how many land banks are there? There's 30 some?
The cap is 35.
That they're gonna use land banks to funnel money. To give the land banks the ability to direct it in the communities in which they exist. Based on the sentiment of the people who are running those communities. Because there's not gonna be the money that came through the foreclosure process prior to this Supreme Court case. To make this an effective body, but she's got 35 of them. And in 55 counties upstate. And they're just gonna have to start, how much did they put in the state budget for land banks?
40, but in the past 2 budgets, it was 10 each year. This year, they're 40.
40 million. Right, so they realize the land bank is gonna be a useful vehicle, but it's not gonna be operated in the
The
model
way they used to do it.
that used to, because the state's gonna have to replace the funding that the counties were achieving by putting the property in line.
So they're gonna give the land banks the funds to be competitive bidders.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, you could look at the program that we're looking at, that's brand new as a version of doing that. So here's, I mean, this almost seems tailor-made for land banks. You have to be a nonprofit, the building's gotta be vacant. So it's almost tailor-made for land banks to take advantage of this and just start running local programs, much the way that a rural preservation company will, or the Wilshire County.
So
The challenge comes in, that, you know, what the state keeps talking about when they pass this law, and Mike's example of there being a $200,000 valued property. And they owe $25,000 in taxes, and we take it and sell it for $30,000, you know. That doesn't ever really happen. Chris can tell you that. I mean, what we're seeing is a property that may be assessed at $60,000 or $70,000, but in all honesty, it's worth 20 because it's got $30,000 worth of cleanup on it. So we sell it for $10,000 and some developer, takes it. That's more the reality of
Yeah.
what's going on but then you bring in, when you try and determine, if you're determining the value by what the assessor says, that's inaccurate. No offense to Suzette or anybody, but sometimes that's way off in either direction. I mean, like, we've seen vacant pieces of land that an assessor may say, well, here's a half an acre of land, and so it's, we don't know, we've never visited the site. So it's worth $35,000 because land is worth X amount of dollars. It's a prime parcel. But then you go there and you find out that it's almost landlocked, or it's a swamp, or, so you can't get anybody to give you $1,000 for it. That happens. And then in that case, the assessor was overly assessed in most cases. We know that the assessment is half of what the real market value is out there today,
So I'm gonna apologize again, because I haven't read it. Which communities, it says opt-out taxing jurisdictions, who gets to opt out?
I don't have a full list of those. So Article 11 communities, which it's just a different foreclosure. So Article 11 basically is the foreclosure process, and some communities have chose to opt out, have a separate process. There aren't a ton of them across the state.
So it would probably not affect us.
No, we're not an opt-out. We're an
But
opt-out.
I'm wondering if we should consider being an opt-out. I don't know
What
what
are
the
the rules?
advantages
We
are.
need to look
to
into
Exactly.
what is an opt-out.
And I'm thinking maybe that piece that I was talking about, it was the piece that's not included, the homeowner bill of rights. That's the language I was, who can be.
Oh, there's the very end,
It's-
again,
this green language.
That's what the bill of rights
There is, yeah, the back page, I believe is that of it.
we're hardly ever foreclosing on something where somebody actually lives. I do get the sensitivity to that, but.
There was a parcel, was it Canaan or,
Mine's vacant.
where there was a trailer that nobody had lived in 10 years, and it was between two property owners, and they were gonna buy it and split it.
Mhm.
Enhance both of their lots. I mean, that could have been well over, the assessment could have not caught up with the deterioration of the property. Because they weren't paying their taxes, they weren't challenging their assessment. And then you're in a situation where you would wanna get an appraisal to use in the non-public sale model. And I mean, I've gone through some appraisals lately, and with all due respect to my appraiser, who's now your deputy, appraisers, as you say, they get, what are those three houses like, but they don't know that the other house,
Right.
furnace hasn't been replaced in 20 years.
Did you have a question?
No, I was just gonna suggest what Chris had suggested, is that our county attorney's office take a look at this
Yeah,
and come
And
back.
we all have a
next
chance to
meeting.
read that,
Yeah.
read it again.
Yeah, and John Sid, who crafted this memo, he's open to zooming in during a board meeting or meeting offline, not a board meeting, not necessarily explaining the
So
budget.
this is officially adopted by the state.
Yes.
And this is so this is the land bank, is whatever meeting, that conference you were at, the one we just appointed you to do formally.
Association.
Yes, association. So this is an advocacy piece. They're gonna prepare a rebuttal to this law.
This is really
What's
just a
what's this being
memo,
done?
so this basically gets distributed, yeah, so it'll get distributed to the land banks that are in the association, and then they very often will go to their local reps or their state rep and say, this is the issue that we're having as the land bank with this legislation as written, then advocacy kind of bubbles up.
Should that, is it something that either, once we get there, and I realize it's not right yet, once we get there, is that something that should go to the Association of Towns or NICEAG? Because
There's a lot of crossover.
it's gonna change the business model.
More nice that because the counties are usually the one doing the foreclosures, so they're the ones losing out on the revenue.
And Chris Coates is gonna
Increase.
become, the head of, Association of Towns.
He already has.
Yeah, well, he didn't give up his other job until next month.
Oh, he's the one that's
So
leading the meetings.
kind of a bit of a takeaway from the acquisition policy is, I've been asked to speak before the Board of Supervisors on, it's August 10th, I believe is the next meeting. And I think there were some questions about how is the land bank going to operate regarding acquisitions.
Right.
So now I've got little bit of clarity about how to answer that question.
We're all confused.
Um, And then the only other item is schedule future meetings, which I think that's really the easiest way to do that is for me to just go through Kelly. She has everybody's schedules.
So I had a quick question. You can tell me this, if this is after this meeting, but I looked at the foreclosure list that you distributed and I checked on the property in our town and it is a vacant, non-buildable lot. So you couldn't build on it.
Okay.
Is it inappropriate to contact both of the abutters and let them know that this is gonna go up for sale and are they
We used to
interested
do-
first thing?
We used to do.
I didn't want to do anything on their control.
Yeah.
But
no,
right now,
it's not.
We don't have ownership of it, right? So
Right.
we wouldn't do that now.
No, but that's not, unethical. It's no, there's no problem doing that, and before. Years ago, we actually used to see if anybody wanted to do, directed. Bid or
Right.
whatever, or directed sale to sell one of the neighbors the lot at a little bit of a reduced, but we ended up with so many problems with that we stopped doing it.
That's interesting that that's not a requirement because for planning meetings, if you're doing something, right, and you're within, if you're on someone's boundary, you usually have to let them know that you're going to build something, but
Within
not that it's
500
going,
feet.
yeah, but not that it's going to be sold.
Yeah, there's almost,
Seems like a-
it's like a lot less, there's almost no rules when it comes to the sales. I mean, getting foreclosing is the problem, with the
Yeah.
sales.
Getting it into our hands.
Yeah,
So at what point in this process would it be in our hands?
once the judge gives us the order, then we prepare the deed, once the deed is filed, that's what it's in.
And that would be immediately before the auction,
Not immediately.
at some point before the auction. right?
I
Some
hate
of
the
the timing,
word immediately.
some of the timing may be subject to those changes.
Just before, how about just before?
That's.
When's the next auction?
Yeah.
Fall? No.
And now this is, no, another.
Yeah, because this muddies how.
But even right now, you had a mayor on buyer, go to the owner and say, let's pay off the taxes and, you know.
I just don't want to be the person to inform the owner that
No.
this property's in play.
Oh,
You know, that-
well, they've been noticed, trust me,
Well,
you
I
know.
know, but
And I mean, the tax information and the delinquent taxes, it's all public information.
I just don't want to be that pawn.
Yeah.
Would you like a motion to adjourn?
Just adopt, yeah, there's no one online, but any public comment? Great.
Motion adjourned. Second.
All in favor.
Okay, I'll talk to,
Thanks for all this good work.
Yeah.